Hi, welcome once again to Krav Maga at Yale. I'm Michelle, and today we are going to be learning two more elbows, namely the backwards elbow and the backwards downward elbow, as well as the roundhouse kick. Make sure to warm up, drink water, and sign in. If you attend Yale and you are watching these videos, every time you watch a video, please sign in and fill out the form in the description below. It would just be super useful to us. Thank you. And if you've missed our previous videos and haven't learned elbows yet, please view our introduction to elbows here, and then view the second video in the series talking about a few more elbows, the last one we released right here. Great, let's get started. So let's start with the backwards elbow. You may recall this elbow, just the classic forward elbow. The backwards elbow is essentially, well, a reverse version of that. But I'm going to start with my legs kind of in a middle stance, meaning that my legs are approximately shoulder width apart and they're a little bit bent, just so that I have a little bit more stability and you can kind of bounce and it'll be easier to rotate. Because as with the previous elbows, rotation really adds a lot of power. The position for the arms in these elbows is the same as in the front elbow, the first one that we learned. Your arm is going to start here. The wrist does not bend like this, does not bend like this, doesn't bend that way or that way. It's just here. But while in the first elbow, we would kind of get some momentum from moving back and then hitting forward, in the backwards elbow, it's the opposite. You can get some momentum by bringing your elbow forward, and then you turn with your hips, with your entire torso, bending your knees to impact back. So look where you are hitting. It sounds obvious, but most people forget about this step. Remember, if you're going to be elbowing someone, you should probably aim. So, right here, the distance in my bend, as you can see, is approximately that, so I'm not like touching my armpit, but I'm also not super extended. And I am going to be impacting with this back area right here, just above my elbow vertex. So the movement is not with my shoulder. I'm not actually moving my shoulder muscles at all. It's entirely the body's rotation. As I'm pivoting to my right, I'm lifting my left heel up, looking, and then turning back and placing my left heel down. When I lift my left heel up, I'm also pivoting towards the right, though my right leg kind of stays bent, doesn't really move. So that's the movement. All right, let's try it on the other side. In this case, this is my left arm. So remember impacting just here, and wrists straight, close to the body, knees bent, legs shoulder width apart, and I'm going to move back, pivoting with my hips, lifting my right heel up and rotating towards the left, towards the elbow that's lifted, and looking at where I'm hitting. For more force, exhale on the impact. Now these elbows are usually aimed at someone's rib cage if they are standing behind you, or perhaps like a short jaw or someone's sensitive like side stomach area. This is something that you know to block like this from that video. And it's best used in some of the attacks we're going to learn in level 2 later on, where an attacker is approaching you from behind. Now these are quite powerful attacks, but when I discussed hitting someone's ribs, you may have thought, wait a second, if someone's behind me, the ribs are like here. Why am I pivoting all the way over here? That's quite far. That's because when you're practicing, when you're shadow boxing now, you want to follow through. That way you'll be used to hitting someone behind you with more force. Whereas if you practice shadow boxing and stop here, you're also going to lose that force that you would have had you gone all the way around. So that's kind of the idea. Also, typically, these follow each other. It's not like this elbow where you're just kind of going with one hand. usually in application, the back elbow looks like this. So you're using the momentum of the pivot of one elbow to gain more momentum on the pivot of the other elbow. And each time, lifting one heel and keeping your knees bent. And remember, the impact is behind, not in front. If you can, ask a family member to stand behind you with perhaps some padding or pillows on either side, or they could stand on one side and just hold a pillow like this for you to impact that way. But this is an important one to know what it really feels like, because most of us are not accustomed to hitting someone that's behind us. So let's practice. I'm going to put a 30-second timer, and let's just do 30 seconds of just like the alternating arm elbows. Go. Next on the list is the roundhouse kick. The roundhouse kick is really popular in movies. It's considered a pretty famous kick in Krav Maga and Taekwondo and other martial arts. So it's time to learn it. Now this one is a little bit more advanced and requires a little bit more balance. It's much easier to do in gym shoes, so you could do it in sneakers, or I put like a half sock on so that I have some anchorage in my heel, and then I can kind of freely rotate on my toe, but that is kind of up to you. So the roundhouse kick begins from a front stance. So as a righty, I'm going to stand in a front stance with my left knee in front. And the roundhouse kick utilizes the back leg. It looks like that. So you'll immediately understand why it's called a roundhouse. There's a lot of going around in it. In the roundhouse kick, your hands stay up here the whole time. So many people on kicks really like lowering their arms or just kind of forgetting all about them, but because this kick is so focused on balance, it's really key to have your hands in the key position for balancing, which is up here. And it's also the key position for blocking and punching and so on. Now the next part is your front knee is bent. It straightens a little bit during the kick, but not entirely. And your back leg is the one that springs up and off. So let's practice just kind of transferring all your weight onto your front knee first. Yeah, great. Now let's do it on the other side. So now my right leg is in front. I'm transferring all my weight onto my front leg. Okay, cool. Now, another part of the roundhouse kick is the fact that you're turning all the way with your hips. In this position, which is the final position where you're kicking, I'm fully facing this way. So for that to happen, my front toe moves. My front toe points that way. Some people, when learning the roundhouse kick, find it easier to step into, and as they step, they kind of do a dancer's foot, where they turn their foot out, then they pivot so that their hips are facing the wall, and then from there, they could straighten, and so on. So if you can, pivot on your toe, on your front foot, to get to the position. So from a front stance, you end up here, or you step, end up here, and back. Then, the next part of it is, when transporting your foot, it transports bent, much like the other kicks we've learned in that video. So that way you're spending less energy in having this huge surface area of leg swinging through the air and having all that air resistance. You have it bent. So it lifts up from here as your body rotates, and then your leg remains bent at approximately 90 degrees, straightens once you're already in this position, and then bends again to go back. And You go here, hit, bend, back. Your foot is flexed on that. The impact is with the bottom of your foot, just kind of there. Or it could be with the front of your foot here, like you're kicking a soccer ball. That kind of depends on where the thing that you're kicking is. I think more typically it is the latter case, where you would be impacting kind of with this inner part of your foot that goes and swings around. But if you wanted to knock something back, as opposed to knocking it sideways, you would hit with the bottom, this bottom of your foot, and kind of the area by your toe, and then back down. Now this is a swinging motion. Because you're kind of going around like this, the force that you're using is going to eventually send your opponent flying that way. And because of that, we are aiming for the calf or the knee. This is a really low kick. You see in movies people just doing like these or something. Look, no, it doesn't make sense. Why would you even do that? If you really want to do a high kick, you do the back leg swing. A roundhouse kick that's super high is just not an effective use of energy at all. You're just going to fall. So this is more of a swing to make someone fall over, to destabilize their position, and then therefore to ensure your own safety. So your hands are here. Let's kind of put it all together. So you're pivoting with your front leg, so my left leg in this case. You're bending your original back leg, so it's my right leg. Straightening, bending, pivoting back, and down. The pivot back is just an exact reversal of what you've done already. You just want to end up in the same position, in the same front stance. Let's switch and do it on that side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here, here. If you're having trouble balancing, try to find one spot on the wall in the direction that you're turning. So in this case, that would be that wall for me. And focus your eyes on it. If your eyes are more stable, your position is also going to be more stable. With 30 seconds on the clock, let's just practice these roundhouse kicks. Each one, 30 seconds for each side. So let's start the first one. Great. 30 seconds on the other side. Nice. All right, now quite similar to the backwards elbow we learned before, now we are doing the backwards downwards elbow, where this elbow was analogous to that elbow backwards. The analogy for the elbow we are about to learn is this one. In fact, the backwards downwards elbow is actually just an extension of the elbow that we've learned before. But it might start here. So there's two different ways to do it. Your stance can be any of the stances we've learned. Typically back attacks or defenses, combatives against attacks from the back are done in a middle stance. As mentioned, that's shoulder width legs and then knees bent. However, you can also do this defense from a front stance, either with the left leg in front or the right leg in front. That's kind of what it looks like here. I'm going to be demonstrating from a middle stance just because a middle stance typically places you closer to an attacker from the back's body, so you don't have that leg in the way. And so you're able to kind of impact them with less distance in between the two of you. And these back elbows are very, very close range elbows. You might not even be able to get into a front stance, but sometimes you can. And we are going to be learning defenses in which that is relevant. But for simplicity's sake, here I am in the middle stance. Now, this back elbow can start from your hands up in fists. It can just be your arms swinging back and elbowing back. So what that looks like from the side, remember, wrists are straight. You really want to get into that good habit. Knees are bent, and then just like that. So directly back, parallel to the body. My palm faces my body the entire time within its fist. And it's an impact here. This impact occurs, once again, in this area right above the tip of the elbow. And on the left, it looks like this. So directly back looks like that. And directly back from the side looks like this. And of course, you do want to draw your hand back from the elbow immediately. I was just demonstrating it a little more slowly so that you could see the exact angle that I was going at. So this is not a movement of my forearm at all. It's entirely a swing that starts from the shoulder and ends at the shoulder. Now this elbow is usually supposed to be very fast and very close range, which is why my hands are here and it's just like that. However, if you want more force but less speed, you can start this elbow up here where you started just the downwards elbow and swing all the way through. Do this right now, there will be a whole lot more force, like you're really dramatically pulling down on some rope. And then you bring your hands back up. That's great, that's a lot of force. The thing is, usually in a backwards attack, elbows are used for speed, not force. They're usually used to distract your attacker so that you're able to weaken their hold of you. And you'll see this in the self-defenses of level 2. But if you have time to go all the way up and all the way back, that's usually more aggressive on your part, which means, is this really a threat? That's something you should consider. And also, just in general, is this really the most efficient way to defend yourself? Here, however, so I'm just going to practice this way, but once again, you can do some of these as well. So from here, it goes directly back and back. Like the other backwards elbows, typically, these are just done 1, 2, like you're running, but you're not running. You're impacting something or someone behind you. This is another defense that would be fantastic if you could have family or friend hold a pillow for. I recommend one of these kinds of pillows that's wider, that they could just stand directly behind you, and that you could impact like that. Unlike this rotating backwards elbow, you don't always see what you're impacting here. Typically, hold that you're in doing this elbow, you might not have all this range of movement to be rotating. But if you can, try to look down and back as you impact and just see where you're aiming, perhaps on the first elbow. And then from there, you can just keep repeating it, and then you can go. These elbows are used because they're pretty effective. One of these, if someone's holding you from behind, say in a back bear hug, this is a really nice, solid hit to the gut. It kind of goes even under the rib cage, which is super nice. It's not nice at all for the person attacking you, but very effective at keeping you safe. It could also be hitting somebody's groin, which would be extremely powerful. Remember, you're bending your knees. You can bend your knees as much as you want. And the greater bend of your knees also gives you more spring and more power. So if you want to bend all the way down, and if you can bend all the way down, impact someone's groin, someone's knee, you certainly can, as long as it's a height from which you can get back up quickly again and be ready to keep fighting. So even though in a practical environment, you probably wouldn't be pummeling somebody like this for 30 seconds, let's practice for 30 seconds just so you can get the hang of it. Just alternating arms, really focus that, make sure you have a good technique, make sure your arm is parallel to your body. So let's do this. And go. Great work. Hope you learned a lot. So stay tuned for the next video, and in the meantime, stay safe in every way.